Hi everyone, today I'm starting a new series called 1 Palette 10 Looks. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the reason why I wanted to start this series is because I have a lot of makeup and this year I really want to shop my stash. And I want to see what kind of looks I can create with things that I already have. And the first palette that I'm going to choose is the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills. The reason why I chose this palette is because I recently got it. It's permanent. So I will stick to more permanent collections just because the limited edition stuff, obviously, once it's sold out, it's no longer available. And also a lot of people seem to have this palette. So I hope that this will sort of inspire you to shop your stash and to get a lot out of your palette. Now, the way I'm going to do these looks is by more natural, so your, everyday, conservative office job makeup to your more dramatic night makeup, or if you've got a special event. So if you want to keep watching to see what kind of looks I've created, I haven't planned it out at all, then please keep watching. So the first look is quite a conservative neutral tone look, and this is the type of eye makeup I would typically wear to the office. So firstly, I'm laying down Golden Ochre as a base, and it's a nice matte beige shade, and I'm using my Suqqu PS4 eyeshadow brush, and you'll see me using this a lot in this video because it's so versatile. You can use it to place the eyeshadow, you can use it to blend, and also use the tapered end to do some crease work, which is what I'm doing with the shade Burnt Orange, which is a medium orange-brown matte shade. Next, I'm taking Cypress Umber, which is a dark matte brown shade, and adding it 3/4 of the way into the lower lash line to give it some definition, because I think it just makes me look a little bit more awake. And then what I like to do is take a clean blending brush and blend out any harsh edges so that it looks seamless. I'm taking Antique Bronze, which is a brown shade with warm red undertones to it with a pearl sheen, and I'm using it on the outer V just to create a bit more depth and make my eyes look a bit more 3D. Lastly, I'm taking Cypress Umber again and using it to line the upper lash line just to make that lash line look a bit thicker. And I also like the use of brown as it looks quite natural compared to if I was to use black. But there's no black in the palette anyway, so that's not an option. And this is what it looks like. All I need is to add some lipstick. So I've added the Suqqu Creamy Glow Lipstick in EX03, which is a really nice pink shade. So in the next look, we're going to transform what we did into something a little bit more dramatic and festive. I'm taking the shade Primavera, which reminds me of pasta every time I see the word, and it is a peachy gold shade with a frosted finish. I'm packing that onto the center of the eyelid using my MAC 242 brush, and to be honest, I did have a little bit of a hard time trying to blend that out because it did go on a little bit chalky and just didn't smooth out. It made my eyelids look pretty mature and textured, which I'm not sure if you can tell, it does look very textured. So I did try and blend it out a little bit to smoothen it out, and that did help a little bit. And then to top it off, I've added some Stila liquid lipstick, and the shade is in Fiery. Next look is a very chic smoky purple eye makeup look, and I really like how this turned out. First, I'm going in with Vermeer, which is a creamy pink shade with a frosted finish similar to Primavera, and I'm using that as a base to brighten up the eye. So after layering it on, I'm going to be shearing it out all over the mobile lid and blending it upwards towards the crease area. And again, I'm using my favorite Suqqu PS4 eyeshadow brush to apply this. And after I finish doing that, I'm taking a clean Zoeva blending brush to smoothen out any harsh edges. Next, I'm taking Buon Fresco and diffusing that onto the outer V with a large blending brush. I did look it up and it refers to a painting on to fresh plaster, which of course was a popular method of painting during the Italian Renaissance. Next, I'm taking Antique Bronze haphazardly onto the outer V to deepen it, as well as a little bit on the crease. And I really like how this goes on top of Buon Fresco. I think it makes it sort of like a deeper mauve shade, unlike when it's swatched on its own, it looks quite brown. I'm then taking the blending brush I was using earlier to smoke it outwards and just keep blending it until you sort of find the shape that you like. And we can go in with the concealer later. On the tapered end of my Suqqu PS4 brush, I have a mix of Buon Fresco and Antique Bronze, and I'm using that to line the lower lash line. And just blend any harsh edges out with a blending brush again. So to finish off this look, I've added some Princess Lee Cross 7 Lashes and Stila Liquid Lipstick in Dolce, which is one of my favourite nudes. Everything I use will be in the description bar below. Next look, we're going to add that gorgeous raspberry pink shade as a pop of colour. So firstly, I'm going in with Primavera all over the mobile lid, and I did forget to mention that I have been using Too Faced Shadow Insurance as a primer just because my eyelids tend to crease and they get quite oily. So it does help to keep everything in place. Next I'm taking Rouge into the outer V, and it's a really nice matte burnt orange shade. The name actually comes from a type of mineral, and the chemical composition is arsenic and sulfur. Obviously there's none of that in the eyeshadow ingredients itself, but I guess it took the name from the actual color of the mineral. I'm also using it along the crease as well. And as usual, I'm taking a clean blending brush. This is the 227 Soft Definer brush by Zoeva, and blending it all together. Next I'm taking Cypress Umber, and I'm using that to deepen the outer V again, and just using my Chikuhodo PS4 eyeshadow brush. Next I'm taking the shade Love Letter, which is that beautiful berry pink shade that your eyes sort of gravitate towards as soon as you see this palette, and I'm using that with my Wayne Goss 21 brush, which is a stiff angled brush, and it's one of my favorite ways to introduce a pop of color because it looks a little bit more subtle. And lastly, I'm taking Primavera into the inner eye to highlight and brighten, and I'm using a stiff synthetic brush. This one is by e.l.f. and it's probably one that I've had for close to a decade. And lastly, I'm going to go in with a bit more Love Letter just to deepen that beautiful pop of color. So I paired this with a rose gold lip, and I'm using my favorite lip gloss of the moment by Fierce Magenta. It's an Etsy brand, and this is in the shade Romance. I know it's cheating a little bit, but I'm going to take the existing look and make it a little bit more dramatic by creating a smoky eye. So I'm taking Rouge with my Zoeva Luxe Soft Definer brush, and I'm using it to create that warm smoky eye that I feel really complements my skin tone. The quality is also really good. It's very pigmented and easy enough to blend. There is a bit of fallout though, so I'd suggest not swiping your brush too hard into the pan. So what I've been doing here is taking a small amount, blending it out, and then slowly building it up to the opacity that I like. Next I'm taking Red Ochre, which is a matte brick red shade, and I'm putting that into the outer V. Now I don't usually do brow bone highlight, but I do want to try using all shades, and this one is Tempera, which is the lighter shade in this palette. It is a beige shade with a satin finish, although it does look quite matte when applied. So here's the finished look. I think it's probably one of my favourites so far. So the next look is a fairly matchy pink look. I don't usually wear pinks, but I think this palette does pinks very well. I'm starting off by using Love Letter to map out the shape where I want the eyeshadow to sit, and I generally like a sort of winged out look to elongate my eyes and make them look bigger. And again, I'm using my Chikuhodo PS4 brush. It seems like I always use this brush, but in reality, it's true. Next, I'm taking Antique Bronze to deepen the color. I actually think this shade works really well layered on top of other shades. I think because it's got that sort of gold reddish sheen to it, it makes the eyeshadow that it's sitting on look a little bit more complex and interesting. I'm going to add a little bit more Love Letter to the outer eye just because I want that color to really stand out. And then I'm going in with a blending brush to clean up any edges. So looking straight into the mirror, I've decided to bring Love Letter up a little bit higher so it's more visible when I open my eyes. And this is the way I suggest doing your eye makeup, because when you're doing it closed, sometimes it can turn out a little bit different. I'm going to do a bit of brow bone highlighting using Vermeer, and then I'm shearing it out with a blending brush because I find this particular shade to be fairly chunky and not that smooth in consistency. Next, I'm going to add Red Ochre to the lower lash line quite liberally as I want it to look fairly grungy. And I'm going to pack more of that colour on using my Wayne Goss 21 brush, and it's an angled stiff brush. I'm also taking the shade Vermeer and packing it on with a stiff synthetic small brush from Crown as my inner corner highlight. And to finish off, I always like to run a relatively clean blending brush through everything to make sure everything's in synergy. Also, sorry about the palette blocking half my face. I'm still getting used to where my hands should be. So I've decided to keep this as a pink monotone look, and I've added lipstick from the same colour family. Next look is probably my favourite so far because I've incorporated mostly orange tones, which is my favourite colour. So to start off, I'm laying down Tempera on the lid. It's a nice cream matte shade, but it's a little bit too light for me, so I've decided to mix that with a little bit of golden ochre as well. This is going to help cancel out any discoloration on my eyelids as they are quite pigmented, so that we have a nice clean base to work with. Then I'm going to take my Chikuhodo T8 brush by Tetsuya Takemura, which is one of my favorites because you can do really precise crease work with it. And I'm using that with Raw Sienna, which is a brown with a sort of yellow golden undertone. It looks quite mustard on my skin tone. With the same brush, I'm using Cypress Umber to deepen the outer V and create a bit of a shadow. I'm using the same brush so that the colors really mix well together, and this brush tends to lightly diffuse color rather than pack it on, so it doesn't look very, I guess, harsh. Then I'm going to take my Chiyohodo GSN 10 blending brush to blend it all out. I'm also taking Tempera as my brow bone highlight. Next, I'm going to take Inglot Duraline and mix it with the shade Real Gold because I really like this color for a eyeliner. So usually when I do eyeliner, I like to start on the center of the lower lash line just because I feel like I'm less likely to make any mistakes. And I'm using my MAC 266 angled brush. Then afterwards, I sort of start to create the shape on the inner and outer edges. And then with the angled side, I start to create the wing. I find it really easy to create a wing liner with an angled brush just because you can already sort of create that shape using the angled edge. I also find it useful to use the lower lash line as a guide as to where to start winging your eyeliner. I'm also going to add some Cypress Umber to the liner just to create, I guess, a shadow and deepen the look. I honestly can't remember why I added it to it, but I think it looks quite nice. I'm also going to use the Real Gut eyeliner to line the lower lash line and connect it up to the wing. So for the lower lash line, I'm going to bring the liner about 3/4 of the way in. And now that I've got my eyeliner on, I'm going to add more Cypress Umber to the outer V to give more dimension and a contoured effect. And as usual, before I finish up, I always clean up with a blending brush. So to finish, I've added some Miami Fever by Ofra on the lips, and I really like how this look turned out. I think these warm tones really suit my complexion. But before I finish, I did decide to add some shimmer to my eyelids, so I did mix Vermeer and Primavera on the lid to create a bit more of a metallic sheen, but to be honest, I think I prefer this look without the metallicness to it. I think it looks quite nice all matte. But yeah, it's up to you to decide what you prefer. So next look, we're going to create this kind of gradient ombre winged look. So I'm starting off by taking Cypress Umber on a angled brush. I believe I'm using a Zoeva one here, but you can use whatever angled brush you have. And I'm starting to outline the shape using the lower lash line as a guide. I'm also going to start bringing it towards the crease and stopping just about less than halfway. I'm then going to take the same shade, Cypress Umber, and line my lower lash line. And there was a bit of fallout. In fact, pretty much all the shades in this palette do have quite a bit of fallout and kickback, so just be aware that you may need to clean up afterwards. Or maybe do your eyeshadow before your base. So I'm continuing to sculpt the shape, and I'm looking straight into the mirror while I do it so I know exactly where the line is going to lie. And of course this will depend on your own eye shape. So to create more of a gradient, I'm adding Real Gut into the wing section and then Golden Ochre, and I'm starting from the inner eye area and towards Real Gut to blend that one through. So I'm taking Cypress Umber again to build up that dark brown because I feel like it kind of got lost with all the blending, and I'm just reshaping and making sure that it's at the opacity that I want. Now that I'm happy with the winged eye, I'm going to add Tempera to the tear duct area to highlight, and I'm also bringing it up in the inner eye area as well. Although I didn't realize it was so light again, I kind of forgot that it's about 5 shades lighter than my skin tone, so I'm blending it out. I know I've used Cypress Umber a lot, but I'm going to use it again to line the lower lash line because it's pretty much the only dark sort of contouring shade or defining shade, as there is no black. I'm also going to connect the lower lash line to the wing line to make sure that it looks natural and cohesive. So this is the finished look. All I've done is add some lip gloss and matte liquid lipstick. Next look is a fairly dramatic cranberry halo smoky eye look. So for the base, I'm taking Warm Taupe, and it basically is what the name suggests, and I love it when names are literal because then I don't have to try and think about how I'm going to describe them. I do have to say though, when I apply it to my eyelid, it does turn into quite an ashy grey kind of tone, rather than a taupe when I swatched it on the back of my hand, and I think that's just because my eyelids are quite pigmented. Next I'm taking Real Guard just above Warm Taupe and I'm adding that into the crease and also a little bit into the outer V as well, and just blending that one through. By the way, Real Guard is very pigmented, so it's best to add this and build it up in small increments rather than add a lot, otherwise you'll be spending a lot of time blending it out like I am. At some point I changed my mind and decided to add Venetian Red to the crease instead. It is a matte cranberry shade, it's very pretty and I haven't used it so far, so I thought I'd try this shade out instead. And because I added that shade very liberally, I'm going to do some blending and cleaning up, and I'm using that brush in circular motions just to really buff that in. Next I'm taking Tempera for my brow bone highlight, and you can really see that powder kicking up. It doesn't really bother me too much, but if you use darker shades, just be aware. And then for the halo or spotlight effect, I am using the shade Vermeer and patting that on the center of my eyelid. Once you're done with that, you can also put a little bit of Vermeer on the center of the lower lash line, and then add Cypress Umber to the outer and inner corners of the lower lash line. I am planning on wearing falsies with this look, so as usual I am first lining my upper lash line using a liquid liner in black. And I'm going to keep it really close to the lash line and keep the line really precise and thin, not too thick. I'm also going to add a small wing, and I'm using the lower lash line as a guide again. I also really like this pen because of the very fine tip. I find that I can get a really precise line. I know it took me ages, but I wanted to show you in full without skipping ahead, just in case you wanted to know how I do my wing liner. And 5 minutes later, and it's done! Lastly, I'm going to go in with more Vermeer to the center of the lid to make that highlight shade really pop. I also forgot to mention that I did add Vermeer as an inner corner highlight and popped on some House of Lashes falsies. So for the final look, I've decided to do a soft cut crease. I'm starting off by using a colored primer for my eyelids, and this is the LA Girl Pro Primer in Nude. I'm applying it straight from the pan, and then I'm going to blend it out using my finger. So I'm going to start by adding burnt orange into the crease area, and I'm using it with a blending brush, so it's not exactly precise crease work, I just want to give that area a wash of colour. So because I plan on using a metallic shade for my mobile lid, I am first applying Firenze Pixie Epoxy, and this is basically a glitter glue or adhesive, and it's really going to help bring out the shimmer. So I've already applied Primavera on my right eye, but I'm going to do the same for my left eye and basically keep it in a winged shape. And I think this is actually the best way I've used Primavera so far, because if I don't use a glitter base, the shimmers don't really come out very strongly and they tend to look very textured, but over this it looks fairly smooth. So I am trying to create a winged shape, however it is not perfect, and that's okay because we can fix it up later. Now when I'm doing my cut crease, I need to use a really precise brush, which is why I chose my Anastasia Beverly Hills number 3 brush, and I'm using the shade Red Ochre to sort of outline where I want the cut crease to be. Again, it may not be perfect, but we can fix that one later. Also, I am tracing the line along where the wing is, so just right above it. I'm going to go back in with Vermeer to clean up any eyeshadow that is sort of out of place. And then I'm going to go back to the cut crease using a precise crease brush so I can blend out any harsh edges, because I wasn't very careful before. We were just outlining the shape and now we are just cleaning things up. Next, I'm going to add Rouge into the crease just to deepen that up. And I think by now it's pretty obvious that I really like this shade, because I have used it in, I think, at least half of the looks here. And it's just a really great versatile shade. I'm going to clean everything up with a blending brush because it kind of went all crazy and a little bit too high up to my brow bone. I'm going to go back in with red ochre for the cut crease because it did get a little bit lost with all the blending. Disclaimer here, I'm not the best at cut creases, especially because of my eye shape and all my eyelid folds. I do find it very hard. So I'm doing this in a way that suits my own eye shape. Next, I'm going to take the same shade red ochre into the lower lash line, and I'm using a smudger brush here to apply it. And I think the good thing about these red shades as well is that they don't make you look like you've got conjunctivitis, because some red shades do really tend to do. Then I'm going to go in with a blending brush and just blend it out and diffuse it a little bit. Because I plan on wearing lashes, first I'm going to line my upper lash line using a liquid eyeliner pen in black, and I'm just going to keep it again really close to the lash line. I'm not going to show you the whole process because I have done that in a previous look, but I am also going to wing it out by following the shape of the winged eyeshadow that I've done. Once I finish the wing, I'm also going to add Primavera to the outside of the wing as well. Next, I'm going to add Tempera to highlight my brow bone so that the cut crease stands out a bit more. And then using Primavera, I'm also going to highlight the tear duct area to brighten the eye. I also like to blend the inner corner highlight so that it doesn't look too crazy. To finish off the look, I've added NARS Velvet Matte Lip Pencil in Train Bleu, and I really do like how vampy this looks. So those are the 10 looks. I hope you found this useful, and I hope it gave you ideas on how you can use your Mon Renaissance palette. Overall, I found this to be a really fun experiment to test out how versatile one palette can be. I really enjoyed the looks that came out of it, and I will definitely be playing with this a lot more. So thank you so much for watching. If you have a suggestion on what palette I can do in the future, please leave it in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.